There we go. Now we've got some audio here. I'm Attorney James Betzold, and today we're going to be reviewing and reacting live to Project 2025. This event today is going to be in English. There might be some words I don't quite know in Spanish when it comes to government policy, etc. So we will be dealing live with Project 2025. Is anybody out there familiar with Project 2025? Because as an immigration attorney, I was really hoping that this whole Trump presidency wasn't going to happen. And there's a lot of interesting things in this Project 2025, apparently, that I haven't looked at. So this is going to be my live reactions to Project 2025. Now, let me just go live now on other platforms as well. All right, and we can begin. For those of you joining, we're going to be looking at Project 2025. And for anyone interested, I do want to know, do you have a copy of Project 2025? Do you have it open? I've actually got it right here on my iPad, so we'll be reviewing it live. I'll be reading directly from it in some sections. Because as an immigration attorney, I know there's a lot to do with immigration and Project 2025. So I'm a practicing immigration attorney. I've been practicing law for 15 years. We lived through and worked through the last Trump administration, the end of the Bush administration, the whole Obama administration, the Trump administration, the Biden administration, and now once again, like Grover Cleveland, we're electing Trump for a second term, which is non-consecutive to his original one. So thank you everyone for joining. Oh my goodness, we're getting a lot of attention here. Looks like that's good. Turning off effects. I'm not going to turn off any effects, but we are here. I want to say hi to everyone. Maricela, Karen Bravo. This one's going to be in English. I hope you all can appreciate that. And again, if you're watching either on TikTok, Facebook, or YouTube, go ahead and throw your questions or comments in the comments. I'll be happy to share those, read those, and go over those with you as we go through the program today. You might see me looking around a little bit because I've got sort of a lot of tech going on here. We should be doing pretty well. So let's start reading, right? Project 2025. For those of you who don't know, and I wasn't 100% on this, so I just briefly looked it up before we started the live, is a document that's usually called like a policy document by the American Heritage Foundation. Now, when I saw that, I already knew a few things about the American Heritage Foundation. And I knew that because as a high school graduate, I decided to go attend Hillsdale College. So I did my first year of college at Hillsdale, which for those who know or those who don't know it's the conservative Republican school of the Midwest. Okay, and being from Michigan myself, I figured that aligned with my values at the time, or the political beliefs at least. Of course, as we grow, we mature. Now, the American Heritage Foundation, of course, they publish books, they publish policies, and so I remembered them having read some of their books about the roots of American prosperity, or the roots of American democracy, or the roots of American, traditional values, right? The roots of Western civilization. They've got a number of books on that, and so it's not surprising that they are a conservative, Republican think tank and policy group. So, somewhat familiar with the ideas here, because as I look through these, I remember hearing some of these ideas being voiced by the likes of, I don't know if anybody else ever used to listen to Rush Limbaugh in a previous life, or other conservative pundits, right? So we're going to start actually on here we are at like page 133 in the Project 2025. So I'm going to be sharing information that comes directly from Project 2025. This has been touted in the election and now currently as the blueprint or the outline for the Trump administration. So for the next 4 years, they're going to be wanting to implement many, if not all, of these policies that are proposed here in Project 2025. So we're going to start in the chapter most relevant to what I know best, which is immigration law. As I said and shared, I've been practicing immigration law for 100 years, 15 years. Okay. And so we're like literally in the trenches here with clients. Well, it's metaphorical trenches. We don't actually have trenches, but we get down into the court system, right? Into the immigration petitions, dealing with USCIS, dealing with Border Patrol, dealing with ICE, dealing with the Department of Justice, and all the different administrative bureaucracies that exist just to deal with immigration, because it's so important. So let's begin. Our primary, I'm reading here, Department of Homeland Security is the chapter. This is by Ken Cuccinelli. Right? Primary recommendation. It says, our primary recommendation is that the president pursue legislation to dismantle the Department of Homeland Security. Wow. It's going to do away with DHS. So DHS is like the parent bureaucracy of USCIS, Border Patrol, TSA, ICE, all of these other enforcement agencies live under the head of DHS. So first paragraph here, Ken Cuccinelli says he wants to dismantle that completely, right? After 20 years, it has not gelled into one DHS. Instead, its various components have different missions, and they've outweighed its decades-long attempt to function as one department, rendering the whole disjointed rather than cohesive. Okay, I mean, I could see that. There's definitely a lot of different administrative bureaucracies. They do work together. It's not like they can't do their job. They do their job. I mean, I can tell you, having to work with them, with USCIS, ICE, and them, it can be a little frustrating because there are different people you got to call for different things, right? In the process of immigration, for example, people will say, "Oh, why don't you just come to the country legally? Why don't all the immigrants just line up at the border and then we'll just let them in?" It's because that's not how it works. There's a lot of different steps you have to take. And even in just a family petition, you're looking at potentially having to deal with USCIS for probably 5 years now if you need a waiver in total. Family petition plus provisional waiver time is going to be like 5 years. And after that, then you're dealing with the Department of State. Now, he doesn't mention that because the Department of State is not part of the Department of Homeland Security. They're their own department. They have their own cabinet seat, right? So the head of DHS is a member of the presidential cabinet. But you have to deal with them as well, and then the individual consulates. And should something go sideways, you might be dealing with the Department of Justice, relevant to an immigration court or maybe a prior removal order. And you might be dealing with Border Patrol if the person leaves or needs to come back for emergencies or things like that. So it is a number of different administrative agencies that we do have to deal with. After 20 years, though, it's not like it doesn't work. I could definitely see where there could be room for efficiencies. And I did see that, what is his name? Elon Musk, right? He's talking now about him and Vivek Ramaswamy being part of the Department of Government Efficiency, Doge, kind of like the Dogecoin, the cryptocurrency, right? This would be a great place, I guess, for them to start, assuming they're not going to do anything bad to immigrants as a whole. Let's take a look here. In fact, I'm going to actually set this up a little higher. So if they give me just a second to pop that on here, put it closer to my eyes. All right, U.S. Customs and Border Protection should be combined with Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE. So they're saying combine CBP, Customs and Border Protection, with ICE. Oh, not just with ICE, but with ICE, with USCIS, so U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, the Department of Health and Human Services, Office of Refugee Resettlement, and the Department of Justice Executive Office for Immigration Review and Office of Immigration Litigation into a standalone border and immigration agency at the cabinet level. More than 100,000 employees, making it the third largest department measured by manpower. Okay, so this is authored by Ken Cuccinelli. We're talking about, I know there's people sort of jumping in and out as we go through the Facebook Live here, or the YouTube Live, or the TikTok Live, which honestly, I'm getting way better results from TikTok. So anybody joining here, and look, for this, if you just want to be informed about what's going to be happening during the Trump administration, this can be like if you're an immigration lawyer, if you're an immigrant, if you're a family member of immigrants, if you are, or if you voted for Donald Trump. Like, if you're his biggest supporter, I think this information is going to be pretty insightful for you. For example, did you know that CBP and ICE are two separate organizations that live together now under DHS? They each have their own function. Border Patrol is pretty much what they are. I mean, they're the guys who sit at the border, guys and gals, the persons, the agents who work on the border to monitor what's going in and going out, right? They're the ones who staff immigration at airports, ports of entry, or even internal checkpoints down in some of the southern states. We have those. But they're not the same organization that's tasked typically with removing people from the United States. And that would be ICE. ICE is the police branch of immigration. Okay? And I can tell you it's corrupt. It's corrupt. Got a bunch of unprofessional and not nice guys and gals working there. All right? We're talking like when you fail out of the police academy, you go to work for ICE. When you go and you fail out of everything else, or you're being punished for bad behavior at a different agency, you find yourself working at ICE. Okay? And your job is literally to divide families, split them up, and send dad packing while mom stays here with the kids, or sending mom and dad packing while the kids are U.S. citizens so they stay here. I'm sure it's not a very thankful job. I'm sure that's why we hear complaints from them all the time in the media. And for sure the job sucks. I mean, who wants to be in charge of ripping families apart? I mean, you're going to go home at night, you're going to look at your own family and be like, poof, at least my family's not illegal because I just screwed up that other family real bad. Hey, we got a question here from Yasmin. Hi, my dad was primary beneficiary of 245I and adjustment of status. I'm married to a U.S. citizen. Would I qualify for 245I? Yasmin, let's see. Let's take a look. In this fact pattern, I'm going to say, children are included as derivatives and can be included as derivatives in that fact pattern. You're married to a U.S. citizen. We would need to look at when you entered the United States, how long you've been here, because there are requirements on being in the United States since. Depending on when the petition is filed, you're probably looking at December 20th of 2001. This is just off the top of my head here. So for Yasmin out there, you may qualify for 245I. If you do, we need to figure that out, and we need to get your papers underway because we don't want any laws changing before you can obtain your residency here since you're married to a U.S. citizen. So a good chance you could qualify for that. Give us a call. Our office is closed now, but if you call it 833 Visa Feliz, or for those watching on Facebook and YouTube, 833-847-2335. Go ahead and call us during business hours tomorrow, and we'll be happy to help you figure out if there's something you should be doing right now to get your immigration status. So for those listening, I am an immigration attorney. We're going over Project 2025 right now. Right? We're looking at the primary recommendation, and one of the first recommendations is to eliminate, or rather combine, Customs and Border Protection, so the people who work along the border, with ICE, who are the people who work internally inside the United States. And it's not just to remove people. I mean, there's special agents at ICE whose job it is to, repatriate artwork or archaeological, I don't remember, it's like patria. In Spanish, it's like patrimonio nacional, like national treasures of other countries that have somehow made their way into the United States. So, but their main function in the immigration context is that it's working to remove people from the United States. And like I was just covering, it's a thankless job, I'm sure. And so, I mean, there you have it. Let's take a look at this here. We're just going to take a quick look and see. There we go. Little less shiny and bright on my face now. Okay, so combine CBP, so Border Patrol, with ICE, with also USCIS. Now, USCIS is the branch of immigration whose job it is to review and approve many types of petitions, okay? So when we're talking about an adjustment of status, like Yasmin was just asking about here and whether she qualifies under 245I, which as a derivative, I believe she does, depending on when she's been in the United States and if she has any other inadmissibility issues. We'll go over that in person. Yasmin, go ahead. Like I said, give us a call or schedule online. You can actually go to our website right now, visafeliz.com. Scroll down. There's a scheduling tool there. Just pick a convenient day and time. We can do a video conference. It's going to be great. So USCIS, though, combining that with these other agencies. Okay, so now you've got thousands and thousands of employees, many now who are working remotely in order to approve a family petition. So when somebody files an application and they want to petition for their spouse, let's say, you need to file a form. The first step is filing a form saying, hey, I'm married to this person. It's a real relationship and I want to get them a visa. It's not actually getting the visa. You got to go through 2 other stupid steps to get there. And it's like, honestly, if we're redesigning the whole immigration system here, I have ideas, okay? Because the way it is right now is highly inefficient, and it's pretty. The system itself is like anti-immigrant, right? You can literally have a robot approving or denying these petitions that are taking humans 12 months to review right now. Okay, it's not hard. You wouldn't even need AI for it. You really just need a basic algorithm, but AI could do a superior job in far less time, like instantly. Like a lot of these family petitions now, you're going to be able to file those online. So you already have all the data formatted correctly in a computer, and it should be able to review it and say, hey, you are married to a U.S. citizen, and you do want to get this visa, and you got the marriage certificate, and you got your birth certificate. Everything looks like it's in order because I'm a computer and I can think really fast. Kabam, approved. But instead, we're waiting 12 months, and we're waiting, and that's all with USCIS, okay? Not to mention the fact that the process has become so complex and at times convoluted that we even, immigration attorney is a thing. It's a profession. I am an immigration attorney, so I know what I'm talking about. I don't think it's impossible to design a system that's a little more user-friendly. All right, so that's just some food for thought. As much as I love what I do and being an attorney and everything, there is, my goodness, robots can do some of this work nowadays. So combine USCIS. There's going to be some unique problems, I think, with that. If you have all of these agencies working together, we're going to lose some advantages, especially since the laws as they live right now are pretty severe, right? Right now, well, you know what? Yeah, I'll give this example now, right? We're just riffing. Let's see here. I don't see any more questions. Oh, I see Jessica Angel. Jessica Angel. So, how is a case with a U.S. citizen marry? Yeah, it can happen. Depending on whether you entered lawfully, depending on, if you have any other reason to be inadmissible to the United States, it may take more or less time. Maybe you can do it here. Maybe you have to do it from your home country. So Jessica, need some more details on that. If you want to throw some in there, I can get you there. It's cutting out. Yeah, that's no good. Microphones here. I am plugged in. I plugged into the hardwired internet to prevent anything from cutting out. So I hope this can be working better. You know what? Let's reroute the audio real quick. I can see I've got Yasmin there. Yasmin, stick with us here. Let me just ask you a question here. If I do this, for example, I'm going to change it to the system default audio device. Does that help at all? Yasmin, if you want to just give me some feedback there. The one thing I can't do is watch this at the same time that I'm doing it. So I can see the little microphone indicator telling me I have volume, but I can't tell if it's cutting out or not. Maybe that change I just did will help. So let's see. Any other questions? An immigrant from Honduras. Okay, yeah. So let's keep talking. USCI. So one of the problems that exist with combining all of these agencies is, first of all, they each have their own function, right? If we start trying to hire someone to work at the combined agency, they're going to have to know a lot more about each of their own distinct functions. There's going to be a lot more training necessary and a lot more potential for errors because immigration law is complex. It's changed many times over the years. And so even for an individual, for example, this person asking, if they're also qualified as a beneficiary under 245I. That law, that 245I, modified multiple times since the 90s. So important to know more details, but there's a lot of information that one has to know. The other problem is, let's say, for example, we have a victim of a crime here in the United States, and we provide them a victim's visa, right? There's a visa available to people who are victims of certain crimes, severe crimes, where they've been traumatized, suffered some extreme hardship because of it. And so they're given this protection here in the United States in the form of a visa. Now, for people to file this application, they need to have the confidence that for asking for this benefit that they are entitled to, that they're not going to get picked up by ICE and deported and, literally roughed up, manhandled, detained in a jail. That's ICE's job. And so if we're combining all of these into one agency, all of a sudden you could have somebody working in the ICE department looking over the shoulder of the USCIS department and wanting to cause chaos on a particular day, and going and arresting people who have applied for benefits that they qualify for, right? And a good example of how this could happen is with this administration that's coming in right now. Every presidential administration has the prerogative, the right, to set their own policy and their own priorities. So right now, under the Biden administration, priority for deportation is with people who have committed crimes. So criminals, we're talking DUIs, aggravated felonies, assault, domestic violence. Those are the people that are being focused on right now. Not grandma or grandpa who's driving down the road and gets stopped by the police and don't have a license on them. Okay. Now, a new president can come in, and we're going to expect this under a Trump administration, and say, you know what? Forget that policy memorandum. Our priority is everyone. Okay. Now that makes it difficult. It's self-defeating in many ways, but they can do that. So one of the negative aspects of combining all these administrative agencies is the sharing of information that used to be more sequestered or private. It's going to ruin people's confidence in their own security. So that's a problem. They also want to combine that with, listen to this, the Department. Oh, it's the Department of Health and Human Services Office of Refugee Resettlement. So that's one thing. Currently, the Office of Refugee Resettlement is housed under the Department of Health and Human Services. I don't know if that's just for funding reasons, but in immigration, this comes up when somebody is requesting asylum, or you have a youth who shows up at the border, someone who's a minor, under 18 years old, maybe they're unaccompanied, and they're requesting asylum, and they're actually handed over to the custody of ORR, the Office of Refugee Resettlement. Individuals who apply or are classified as refugees under the immigration system, they're handled through that department as well, and that's a department that makes sure that they're safe, okay? Make sure that they're safe, make sure that if they come here without anything in their pocket, that they have access to food, lodging, clothing, health care, right? Especially that emergency health care, to make sure that they have the appropriate vaccines when they're entering the United States. So whether it's vaccines or treatment for anything that they picked up on the way, they're in charge of that. So they're immigration adjacent, I would say. Does that hurt or help anything by putting them into one brand new organization? Maybe, maybe not. Here we go. And the Department of Justice Executive Office for Immigration Review, EOIR. This is the abbreviation for Immigration Court. Okay, so what they do is people who get picked up by ICE are brought to immigration court, where an immigration judge will determine if they're in fact to be removed from the United States or if they qualify for some other form of relief. So, wanting to combine the Department of Justice's Executive Office for Immigration Review with an overarching immigration department, I get the idea. But then all of a sudden you don't have, and it's already not really a neutral mediator. Most of the immigration judges used to be ICE prosecutors trying to get people out of the United States. There's a few who were in private immigration practice, but the vast majority have been government workers forever. So it's already not very unbiased, but it's even less biased if they all answer to the same boss, right? As it is, the Department of Justice is headed by the Attorney General. He's the boss of the judges. The government ICE attorneys, they work for ICE, which is under DHS. It's technically a different boss. So you lose a little bit of the neutral finder of fact when it comes to that. Now, that's not unheard of in other immigration aspects, right? When you file an adjustment of status, there's not a prosecutor saying, hey, we don't think you should get your green card. It's just an immigration agent saying, hey, do you meet all the requirements? Yes? Looks great. So I think what makes more sense is just to do away with the Executive Office for Immigration Review, get away with the whole concept of having an immigration court, still having a neutral fact finder, and not putting an immigrant who's probably poor and uneducated up against a lawyer who's working for the government, and I'll tell you what, I mean, I've had to deal with a lot of these, the attorneys that work for ICE and show up in immigration court. I mean, it's just totally unprofessional. I mean, I don't like them. Most of them, I've met a couple that, I were like, okay, we're colleagues. But a lot of them, I don't know what it was. I hope they've all retired by now. I know some of them have. But, I mean, the way that it's set up, there's really no room for negotiation because there's nothing that you can negotiate with. Their goal is to deport your client. Your goal is to do anything to not get the client deported. So I think I appreciate what they're trying to do, saying, hey, if we just roll all these into one thing, it's going to be more efficient. Well, not necessarily. And you lose some due process rights. They also want to, so they want to combine all of those bureaucratic administrative agencies into a standalone border and immigration agency at the cabinet level. Okay, so they want to have a Secretary of Immigration to be in the president's cabinet. I mean, I'm not going to say that doesn't make sense. I'm going to say it is sort of a hodgepodge, and unless you rewrite the immigration laws, it won't work, right? You need to completely rewrite all the immigration laws. And here's the reason. Someone who's in immigration court, right, they're in removal proceedings. If they want to turn around and file a family petition, that's with a different agency, and different rules start to apply. They need to show that they're not doing it just for immigration or just for escaping the consequences of immigration court. They need to show it's a legitimate marriage if it's a family petition. But certain administrative agencies like USCIS have exclusive jurisdiction over certain types of applications. For example, adjustment of status is a tricky one. If you're classified as an arriving alien to the United States, USCIS has jurisdiction over that adjustment of status, or AOS, as Yasmin pointed out. If, on the other hand, you're in immigration court and you're not classified as an arriving alien, then the immigration court has exclusive jurisdiction over your adjustment of status application. So these things are all written in statute and Code of Federal Regulations. If you're looking for an easy solution, it's not just mishmashing everybody together in one organization, because then you're really starting a fight over whose job is what. And the ones stuck in the middle are the immigrants. So you would really need to rewrite the entire Immigration and Naturalization Act and all the other statutes that are immigration adjacent. Let's move along here. Let's scroll down here. We're going back to, this is Project 2025. We're reviewing the ideas and the primary recommendations that Project 2025 make, and that is currently, it appears it is the blueprint of the Trump administration. The Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency be moved to the Department of Transportation. I don't know that makes sense. The Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, be moved to the Department of the Interior, or if combined with CISA, to the Department of Transportation. All right. Here we got some. What's this? The U.S. Coast Guard be moved to Department of Justice. And in time of full-scale war, i.e. threatening the homeland, to the Department of Defense. Alternatively, United States Coast Guard should be moved to Department of Defense for all purposes. Okay. Yeah, the Transportation Security Administration be privatized. Oh, shoot. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised, the American Heritage Foundation, they've always been really into privatization for certain things. I can imagine it'll be about as fun as privatized prisons. The Science and Technology Directorate be moved to Department of Defense, and the Office of Countering Weapons of Mass Destruction be moved to the FBI. Neither here nor there. All right, so provides a little background on the Department of Homeland Security. And what are they saying here? It's that the DHS, Department of Homeland Security, is bloated, bureaucratic, and expensive. Yeah, for sure. It also lost sight of its mission priorities. Let's see, Department of Homeland Security. Probably that happens with every government administration or administrative bureaucracy. DHS has also suffered from the left's wokeness and weaponization against Americans whom the left perceives as its political opponents. Yeah, I don't really see that. At least from an immigration perspective, I don't know. I don't have anything to say about that. Does power get abused? Sure, but it would get abused. It gets abused under the Department of Justice. It gets abused wherever it be found. Okay, return it to its mission. Okay, prioritizing border security and immigration enforcement, including detention and deportation. It's critical if we are to regain control of the border, repair the historic damage done by the Biden administration, return to a lawful and orderly immigration system, and protect the homeland from terrorism. Oh, give me a break. The vast majority of people coming in through the border are not terrorists. The ones that have met with me looking for immigration advice, it does nobody any good to put them in jail. I understand it as a deterrent, wanting to deter people from coming to the U.S., but I don't know, I've got some people watching here. Is anyone familiar with the supreme law of the land? This was a question we did on one of our short videos, Ciudadano Ya, for a trivia question for some of the kids. The supreme law of the land is the U.S. Constitution. The U.S. Constitution says the laws of the United States are, first, the Constitution, second, treaties entered into by the United States, and also the statutes passed by Congress. Now, one of the treaties entered into by the United States says that if somebody is in the United States or at the border, they have the right to apply for political asylum protections here in the U.S. So if the idea is we want to just detain everyone, it's kind of antithetical to the whole purpose of an asylum system or being able to apply for asylum. Additionally, and I bet if we look a little further down in this document, we're going to find that they want to privatize all the immigration detention centers. That's a moneymaker, and you can bet all the Republican congressmen and women, and Democrats for sure, if they see the way things are going, they're going to be investing in these private prison companies. Now, when you incentivize the detention of people, you're just going to get more people detained. That shouldn't be the goal of an immigration system. It shouldn't be the goal of a government. There's smarter policy things that can be done to achieve enforcement or to achieve the goals of fewer people showing up at the border asking to be let in. It takes a little creativity and a lot of leadership, which we've not seen in a long time on this matter. Let's see here. Okay, so Project 2025 says we really got to do more enforcement, including detention and deportation. It's critical if we're going to regain control. And, of course, they lame this all at the blame of the Biden administration. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, it says here, return to a lawful and orderly immigration system. Did I mention that to get a waiver approved is taking like 4 years now? So if we're going to return to an orderly, lawful system, I'm all on board for that. But you got to do something about these ridiculous processing times. Let's see. Some of this is this Project 2025. It's not like a strict policy document. It's a lot of propaganda in here too, right? Like if we read, oh, it's the Biden administration that did this, the Biden administration did that. The man's like 100 years old, doesn't remember his own name half the time, I'm sure. And so I think we can't put all of America's problems at the feet of the Biden administration. Unfortunately, I mean, it's just a reality. It's been like the immigration system has been somewhat a pile of garbage for years, racked with inefficiency, racked with a bunch of unnecessary steps. It's been that way for years. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Budget, bloated, conservative, FEMA. All right, what would a successful DHS look like? According to Project 2025, it would secure the border, thoroughly enforce immigration laws, correctly and efficiently adjudicate immigration benefit applications while rejecting fraudulent claims. Okay. Again, things that can be done with computers, things that can be done with AI. I'll bet you could fire 85% of those working in the immigration-related agencies and replace them with a reliable AI system within 2 years. Correctly and efficiently adjudicate crime. Okay, yeah. Correctly and efficiently. I hope efficiently means quickly. Secure the cyber domain and collaborate with critical infrastructure sectors. Yeah, I mean, it's what they're doing now. Provide states and localities with a limited federal emergency. Look at that. You eat too many crackers before 11 and you get the hiccups. Provide states and localities with a limited federal emergency response and preparedness. That's not even a good sentence. In order to what? It doesn't even define what they mean. What? Providing states and localities with a limited federal emergency response and preparedness. I think this is just saying the federal government should give money to states and localities. I think that's the translation here. Secure our coasts and economic zones. Yeah, again, that's different than immigration. I don't know why you need the... Did it say to put the coast... No, it said put the Coast Guard... Did it say to put them into the... Here we go. Move to the Department of Justice. Okay, I get that. I don't see why that's necessary. It's more of an armed force. So you're going to have somebody who's not an armed forces expert who gets their own Coast Guard as an armed force. Seems a little... You know, I'm sure somebody's written a policy memo on it, but this is not very thorough, to be honest, this Project 2025 document. What else do they want to do? A good DHS would protect political leaders, their families, and visiting heads of state or government. Well, political leaders need protection, yes, right? Sometimes there's unaliving attempts. I think we've seen that in this go-round here. Their families and visiting heads. Okay, protect political leaders. Okay, protect their families. Okay, and visiting heads of state or government. I don't know what that means exactly. I mean, I know what it means on the plain words it, but what they mean by that, I don't want to get tripped up and say, hey, that's a great idea, because I don't know if it is. Oversee transportation security. Yeah, but they already said here, oversee transportation security, but they're going to privatize the TSA. I don't know. I mean... Has anyone had a good experience with the TSA? Sometimes you do, right? I don't know. It just seems like I feel like I got a little bit of a sore spot with TSA still. I'm going to take away your water bottle when you're going through security or give you a hard time for something that's not a big deal. So I don't know. I don't know how you're going to oversee transportation security if you privatize TSA, because then it ends up being more like a private prison system. Office of the Secretary. They should take on the following issues. So in the next administration, the Office of the Secretary of DHS should take on the following issues. Expansion of dedicated political personnel. they want to give him a team of political appointees. They need their own dedicated team of political appointees selected and vetted by the Office of Presidential Personnel. I want to see more immigration-specific things here. All they're saying is these platitudes about, like, we just need to enforce the law and deport more people. I need to okay, looks like TikTok is telling me I need to click some stuff. All right, welcome everyone who's joining us on TikTok here. I've got way more people showing up on TikTok than I do over anywhere else. Ronald, good to see you. Glad you joined us. This one is all in English. Norma Mejia, welcome. Let's see here. What do we got here? Waving at people joining. Hi, Vanessa Hernandez, 877. I'm an immigration attorney, James Betzold. I practice immigration law. I have 15 years doing this. We're reading over some of the topics here in Project 2025 because they've stated, this incoming administration has stated, this is going to be like their blueprint. It's published by the Heritage Foundation. Again, a very, very conservative policy think tank. Not seeing a lot of surprises here. Clearer, more durable, and political-only line of succession. I know why they're doing this. Okay, look. Let's read. Based on previous experience, the department needs legislation to establish a more durable but politically oriented line of succession for agency decision-making purposes. The ideal sequence for line of succession is certainly debatable, except that in circumstances where a career employee holds a leadership position in the department, that position should be deemed vacant for line of succession purposes, and the next eligible political appointee in the sequence should assume acting authority. Further, individuals wielding blah, blah, blah. Okay, so what they're saying here is when you have an administrative bureaucracy, so we're an executive agency, right? We're talking about Department of Homeland Security here. Let's say that the Secretary of Department of Homeland Security says, you know what, I quit. I don't like the president. I don't like working for him. I don't like doing this job. I quit. Or maybe they get busted in something, and so they got to go spend more time with their family. The person to replace them needs to be appointed by the Senate. So whoever the replacement cabinet level secretary is, they are a political appointee by the president and confirmed with the advice and consent of the Senate. Now, it takes time for that person to be replaced, so there is usually a deputy or acting director. Usually it's a deputy director who becomes the acting director of the administrative agency. Now, they're saying here quite cleverly, based on previous experience, we need legislation to make a more durable and politically sustainable blah, blah, blah way to replace the guy who quits at top. The guy or gal. We'll be inclusive here. Now, the reason they're doing that is because under the previous Trump administration, we had the head of DHS, and I forget who was the first one. I don't know, he quit or something, right? And then he was replaced by, I believe it was Chad Wolf, who became the acting director of either USCIS or DHS. And there is a statute called the Federal Executive Vacancies Act. I can't remember the exact name now. Some of you might know this if we have any other attorneys watching. But there is a statute, a law that states who is next in the line of authority if the secretary of that executive agency is no longer there, right? And it's not just whoever the deputy was. The Federal Vacancies Act, I believe that's what it's called, the Federal Vacancies Act. What that says is, there's a system of rules that say, well, it has to be someone who's been in the department, they've got experience, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a lot of time limits for experience on that. And so what ended up happening is, for example, Chad Wolf, everything that he did as the head of, I can't remember if it was USCIS or DHS as a whole. I think it was just USCIS. But everything he did to try and hurt immigrants and screw stuff up, attorneys went to court, sued, and won, and they said, look, everything this guy does is invalid. Throw it out the window, judge, because he was unlawfully appointed. And the consequence of being unlawfully appointed as the head of an agency is nothing you do has any weight of law. So they had to scrap months and months of this guy's work, which frankly was a net positive for America and for freedom and for a healthy immigration system and a kind immigration system. Anyway, So what they're saying here is, oh, we're very, very upset that we couldn't just do what we wanted and we had to follow the law. We need a different law. So what they're asking for here is a political-only line of succession, meaning whoever the president appoints to be the next one becomes the next one in the line of succession. It's probably a bad idea. When you go to run one of these administrative or executive agencies, you have to know something about how it works, something about the mission, something about how the practical function works, right? You don't want to just, I mean, if I don't know anything about airplanes or flying because I refuse to ever fly, should I run the FAA? Should I make the rules for the FAA or make the decisions on like what rules would be good for flying airplanes? No, you want somebody who knows what they're doing. So experience in the agency is not a bad thing, right? What it does prevent is it prevents a president from exerting too much direct influence on all the administrative agencies. Part of the checks and balances in the Constitution and in the Federal Vacancies Act, it puts that there so we don't end up with a dictator. America's not designed to have somebody who's president at the top and just gets to make all the rules himself. It slows down the wheels of government a little bit. It's like that for a reason. And I'm sure some people will say, well, we should be able to go faster. We should be able to make all those dramatic changes. Yeah, I'm sure it's a two-edged sword. Let's see here. Soft closure of unnecessary offices. So they're saying the next DHS secretary, pending a possible presidential decision to shrink or eliminate DHS itself, the next administration will still have to protect the homeland as required by law. They should and can and should use their inherent discretionary leadership authority. Okay, you're going to find problems there, I think. To just say, oh, I have inherent authority to do this. Well, you're going to be ending up in court, and a judge will figure that out. But their job is, protect the homeland. They want to soft close ineffective and problematic corners of the department. Corners of the department? Do we not have any better words to use here, Guy? Like, be a little more detailed? The secretary, all right, soft close them while those corners are to be determined. Okay, so they don't even know what they would close. Shift personnel funding and operations, blah, blah, blah. There's nothing concrete there. Thinking about some of these suggestions, it would require a complete rewrite of many of the statutes, the Federal Vacancies Act, the Immigration and Nationality Act. It looks at this point like the Republicans will have control of the House and the Senate and the presidency, not to mention they've got a pretty favorable Supreme Court for them. So I'm not going to say it's impossible, but we'll see how quickly they can do it because, my goodness, there's a lot of work to do there. Restructuring and redistribution of career personnel. So I'm reading again from the document. To strengthen and I'm reading from Project 2025. Here it says, to strengthen political decision-making and ensure that taxpayer dollars are being used legally and efficiently, the secretary should make major changes in the distribution of career personnel throughout the department. This is some of the stupidest things. Okay, listen, look. We should take all the people who are working for DHS that have law enforcement experience and move them from offices and put them to field billets to maximize law enforcement capacity. Yeah, well, slavery is illegal, Guy. If they're riding a desk, I'm sure they don't want to be out arresting people in the field again. Like communism, it maybe sounds great when you think it in your head, but when in practice, it's platitudes. This is just platitudes and pandering, it looks like. Compliance for grants and other federal spending. Come on. I'm looking for something real here. Oh, here we go. What is this one? Reading from Project 2025, and how much time are we at here? We're almost at about an hour. Let's go a little longer. So we're reading from Project 2025. We're finding out what are the immigration-specific things that they mention here, and I just came across one here. the DHS secretary should deal with non-use of discretionary guest worker visa authorities to stop facilitating the availability of cheap foreign labor in order to support American workers, particularly poor and middle-class American workers, and follow congressional intent. The secretary should explicitly cease using at least 2 discretionary authorities as part of his or her broader effort to support American workers. Okay, here they are. The secretary should make it clear that he or she will not use the secretary's existing discretionary authority to increase the number of H-2B, which is seasonal non-agricultural visas, above the statutorily set cap. So it's saying there's a statutory cap and they won't use their authority to increase it. Okay? Well, that seems like a contradiction. The secretary should not issue any regulations in support of the H-2 eligible country list, the effect of which would prevent favoring certain foreign nationals seeking an H-2 guest worker visa based simply on their nationality. Well, there's reasons that we have that list. But they're saying not to favor H-2 guest workers based on nationality. Somebody's got an interest in this one, I think. Restoration of honesty and transparency. Oh, yes, they should restore honesty and but they don't say anything specific about that. U.S. Customs and Border Protection. Oh, okay, we're getting to some more meat, it looks like. Saying it should combine some more administrative agencies. Let's take a look here. ICE. Needed reforms. Oh. Okay, here's a juicy one. This will be fun. What are the needed reforms found within ICE, according to Project 2025? The administration should order ICE to stop closing out pending immigration cases and apply the Immigration and Nationality Act as written by Congress. Okay, what they're saying here is many times there's immigration court cases. There's I don't know what the current count is. Somebody could Google that. But it's probably above 1 million now of these pending cases. And because things like that last border bill did not pass, there's not enough judges or prosecutors working for the government to handle it all. So the Biden administration, just like the Obama administration did, prioritized the cases where people were committing crimes and were dangerous and a danger to society. They closed out the ones for grandma, right? Grandma, grandpa, mom, dad, who don't have a real criminal history to speak of. They were just closing those cases and saying, you know what? Either we'll administratively close it, which means we'll take history to speak of. They were just closing those cases and saying, you know what? Either we'll administratively close it, which means we'll take it off the calendar and you probably just won't ever have to come to court again. Or they were outright terminating them, saying, hey, we don't have time to deal with you. Don't get arrested. You don't get a work permit for this. You don't get to become a resident or citizen. We're just not going to kick you out of the country right now. And they would close those cases. So Project 2025 says that this is misguided. It's an egregious example of lawlessness, allowed thousands of illegal aliens and other immigration violators to go free in the United States. They said they should direct ICE to stop ignoring criminal aliens identified through the 287G program. So there's certain parts, for example, driving on a suspended license. Maybe they got in an accident, and maybe they were driving drunk, in which case you don't have any sympathy from me. Or some other, could be even like a minor criminal issue or disturbing the peace even, right? If local police find out you're undocumented, they would call ICE on you right away, and then ICE would come pick you up. So they're saying they should fire that program up again, let it run 100%. ICE should be directed to take custody of all aliens with records for felonies, crimes of violence, DUIs, previous removals, and any other crime that is considered a national security or public safety threat as defined under current laws. Oh, shoot. Look at this next one. We got to talk about this. eliminate T and U visas. Now, this is under the section for ICE, okay? ICE has nothing to do with T or U visas, but they say eliminate T and U visas. So they want to eliminate visas for people who are victims of sex trafficking. Oh, looks like my camera may have gone out over here. Give me 1 second. This is too good to just let go. I'm going to go to settings. What do we got? What happened to the... Looking at a couple different screens here. Pause. Yeah, we're going to have to switch back to a different camera on this system. Let's go iPhone camera. Oh, I wonder if the phone finally died. Didn't charge it up enough. Okay, well, in that case, we are going to pivot this camera to FaceTime camera. And we're going to have to just re-angle this real quick. There we go. And now, of course, I clicked off of it again already. And let's see here. Am I going to be... The whole reason I was doing this with the camera is I couldn't get the virtual background to work. And right now, likewise, it doesn't want to do its job. Even though I click, I have a green screen. Anyway, so let's talk about this. Eliminate T and U visas. Well, that's a kick in the head right there. So a T visa is a visa for someone who's been the victim of human trafficking, human labor trafficking, and human sex trafficking. All right, we got to be careful how we talk about this on a live so we just don't get booted from everywhere. So that's worth talking about. Those visas are valuable. Those are important. Those are important tools not only for law enforcement, but for alleviating suffering and for eliminating and curing the evils of human trafficking. So if you're one of these people out there, and I know there's a lot of people on the right, maybe on the Christian right, we're talking about, if you're really concerned, if you're truly concerned about human trafficking, you will not support this part of Project 2025. Being the victim of human trafficking is awful. Like, we've had clients who've suffered through that, and it's just the worst thing for them. And there's no viable escape for many of them absent this visa. Talking about U visas, again, same deal. Maybe you weren't the victim of human trafficking, but you were the victim of domestic violence, a felonious assault. Maybe your boyfriend or your husband or wife kept trying to unalive you or like leave you bleeding. Like awful, awful, awful stuff. These visas are a lifesaver. And the fact that they would suggest to eliminate T and U visas is egregious. It's just, you got to be kidding me, guys. It's like the worst thing you can think of. There's way better ways to attack the problem of immigration enforcement in the United States. You don't need to go after these visas. Here's what they say, okay? Victimization should not be a basis for an immigration benefit. If an alien who is trafficking or crime victim is actively and significantly cooperating with law enforcement as a witness, the S visa is already available and should be used. Now you done pissed me off. Okay, here's the deal. I've been practicing law for 15 years. 15. Do you know how you get an S visa? It's not something that an immigration attorney can do. It's not something that the immigrant themselves can do. I have many clients who participated actively with law enforcement down at the border. And what do? Thanks for your help. We won't deport you. Go off into the U.S., but you're going to be there without documents, and eventually we think it's going to be hard enough where you'll just give up and leave anyway. That's the current status of an S visa. It has to be recommended and issued by the prosecutor who's helping. I've not seen one. I've never even seen like a paper one. I've never even seen an image of a visa that said this is category S. Now, maybe if we go and Google for it, maybe we find a sample one out there. But S visas are a practical unreality. They're not used at all. They're garbage. They help nobody. And so when you say, oh, well, we shouldn't use T visas or U visas, we should just use the S visas, that's bloody ignorance. Ignorance of the law, ignorance of how things actually operate. And so you'd say, oh, well, if you're actively cooperating as a witness, we'll give you a victim. What if you were beat up so bad that you couldn't show up at court? Can you get a visa then? You see, because under the crime victim visa, not only do you have to be the victim of a crime, you already need to show that you've been actively cooperating with law enforcement, that you reported the crime to the police. So we don't have a bunch of mafiosos out there beating the crap out of or abusing or extorting immigrants just because they don't have access, or because then they wouldn't have access to the justice system here in the United States. That's the situation you would end up with again if we get rid of the U and the T visas. So this idea, Ken Cuccinelli, I don't know if I can use the F-bomb on TikTok Live without getting boomed, but that's how I feel about it. That's nonsense. The T visa and the U visa are vital tools for law enforcement. They are not like, it's no walk down a yellow brick road across the candy cane forest and over the Rainbow Bridge to getting a U visa or a T visa. You already have to report it to law enforcement in both situations. And for the U visa specifically, you need a certification from the police saying, yes, you were the victim. Yes, you were helpful. Yes, if you stop being helpful, we get to tell immigration and they'll take away all your benefits. Okay, so this is just stupid. This is just dumb. Issue clear guidance. Hold on, I'm going to take a second here. Let's take a water break. Let's answer any questions. Let me scroll up here, see if we have any outstanding questions here on the good old TikTok of USA. I don't see any outstanding. R.A., welcome. Henry Esquivel, welcome. We're doing this one in English here. Oh, look, we got some comments over on this side. Carolina Morera, again, as always, abogado. Can I get a license in California? I have an order of deportation in ausencia, U visa pending, but... okay, look, Carolina, I can't help you on that. To get a driver's license in California, if you have a work permit based on the U visa, probably yes. Other than that, I can't give any advice like you're asking for there. I'm sorry. What is this? Something visa police and Smurfette kissing in a tree. Kissing. Oh, I'm being trolled here by the cool Toad vlogs. The reacting just for the police is okay. Hey, the cool Toad vlogs. I don't know if you're still watching on YouTube, but thanks for the comment. I wonder if the cool Toad vlogs knows anything about immigration or T visas or U visas. You know, even among immigration attorneys, some of the T visas are like unicorns. And we've handled a few of these unicorns and won already. U visas, a little more common, way more limited to how many they can give out per year compared to how many are outstanding right now. It's no cakewalk to get one. And again, to eliminate a U visa and T visa, you need to do that through statute. So, shoot. That's not great. Okay. The next thing that they're saying that in Project 2025 that USCIS or that ICE should do, issue, I'm going to take a screenshot of this because this is just kind of, this is a craw in my hat. I'm just going to save that screenshot for later reference. Issue clear guidance regarding detention and bond for aliens. Got news for you, Ken. There is clear guidance. There's regulations. There's statutes. There's some people who don't qualify for immigration bond. There's some people who do. The bond determination is made either by the immigration judge or it's made by the Department of by ICE, right, or Border Patrol as they're paroling someone into the U.S. What's their problem with this one? This is Project 2025. I'm reading from it right now. It says, and I quote, thousands of illegal aliens are allowed to bond out of immigration detention only to disappear in... I'm reading from it right now. It says, and I quote, thousands of illegal aliens are allowed to bond out of immigration detention only to disappear into the interior of the United States, where many commit crimes and many others disappear, never to be heard from again. This occurs primarily because of poorly worded bond regulations, contradictory bond policy memoranda, and poor practices for managing released aliens and the Alternatives to Detention program, which requires significant reform. I'll bet Ken Cuccinelli owns stock in some of these alternative to detention contractors. So what they'll do is sometimes when they're paroling somebody into the United States, they'll say, hey, you know what? You can come into the U.S., but you got to wear a bracelet around your ankle. Well, that bracelet that goes around their ankle, there's a private company behind all of those. Okay, so I would say if we're looking at an incoming Trump administration that's going to be working on this, maybe what we should do, everybody watching this, we should just take a look at the stock prices and maybe some options to purchase stock of these companies. Because if they're going to try and expand the Alternatives to Detention program, which in past years was used more, recently it's been used less, it really doesn't help anyone. Because if you've got this alternative to detention bracelet around you and you decide you're not into it, you cut it off, you chuck it off. I'm not going to tell you what to do with it, but it gets disposed of one way or another, and the person can still disappear, right? One of the things that has helped is actually giving a bond, but I mean, this is just part of when you create a system where you say, okay, you can come into the U.S., you can fight for your case. When 97% of those cases are denied, there's not much incentive for most people to show up to all their court hearings. Now, there's practical immigration reasons why they should. The immigration consequences are less if you show up to all your court hearings. Even then, you get a removal order. At least if it's not in absentia, like in your absence, the consequences are less. Detention and bond of aliens. We're going to prioritize national security in the student and exchange visitor program. Oh, here we go. This requires working with the Department of State to eliminate or significantly reduce the number of visas issued to foreign students from enemy nations. Who's an enemy? Are we at war with any nation right now? I mean, there's some definitional problems here, I think. The concept is, yeah, we don't want enemies, peoples coming here. Who then defines who the enemy is? Most of the blah, 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 blah. I should clarify this or that. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so they're saying that Homeland Security Investigation. So this is part of DHS. No, ICE. DHS, ICE, Homeland Security Investigations, special agents should enforce Title 8 and 18 crimes as the biggest part of their portfolio. Well, good luck. I know they're not staffed enough for that. Alien smuggling. Okay, I agree. You shouldn't be smuggling aliens. Trafficking, right? Shouldn't be trafficking in people. And cross-border crime. Okay, so now we're just talking about grandma coming across the border or mom coming across the border with the baby. Those should be the biggest part of their portfolio of crimes. They don't have the staffing for it or the funding. Guaranteed. Guaranteed. Plus, then, you need to reintroduce some previously utilized programs to try and expedite that. But it's so much easier for a Border Patrol agent right now to say you're being expeditiously removed. The role of ICE deportation officers should be clarified. Oh, here we go. My favorite people in all of government. Enforcement and removal operations. ICE, okay, I'm reading from Project 2025 here. ICE enforcement and removal operations should be identified as being primarily responsible for enforcing civil immigration regulations. Civil immigration regulations everywhere, including the civil arrest, detention, and removal of immigration violators anywhere in the United States without warrant, where appropriate, subject only to the civil warrant requirements of the INA where appropriate. Okay. I tell you what, the American Heritage Foundation and these guys here, Ken Cuccinelli is the one who's credited with writing this. They did some of their homework, right? So when we talk about people knowing their rights, in the United States, you have the right to due process. You cannot be arrested except under certain circumstances, right? Either you messed up and got caught in the act, or you admit it, then, the cops there, and then they can arrest you based on suspicion of a commission of a crime based on sufficient evidence, or there's a warrant for your arrest issued by a judge. Now, you can't get arrested by ICE based on an administrative warrant for arrest of illegal alien. Okay, those exist. It's something that they just write up on their own, and they say, we think this person doesn't have papers. We want to arrest them. It doesn't give them the right to knock down your door and to come in and take people out of your house. They need a special order for that. And this one, so this point here, they're saying they want to remove that impediment. They want ICE to be able to go anywhere in the United States. It doesn't say if it includes your house without a real warrant to make arrests. Typically, ICE doesn't pull. Well, I've seen cases where they do pull people over. They're so hard. Those are so hard to challenge in court and avoid the immigration consequences. But all ICE memoranda identifying sensitive zones where ICE personnel are prohibited from operating should be rescinded. Oh, geez. All right, so they want ICE officers to show up at your court hearing, at your school. No, that's a bad idea. That's just... Let's keep some places sacred, okay? We don't want ICE showing up at your school and deporting children, your kid's friend. That's traumatic all the way around. Forget it. To maximize the efficient use of its resources, ICE should make full use of existing expedited removal authorities. The agency has limited the use of expedited removal to eligible aliens apprehended within 100 miles of the border. This is not a statutory requirement. That's usually where we see it, whether it's like currently, right? If somebody's entering and they're within 100 miles of the border. However, I've seen cases where and this is from years ago where we're reviewing past documents, someone's as far north as Colorado, they get stopped en route somewhere and they get turned around and expeditiously removed from the United States. So expedited removal with that is administratively, without having to go in front of an immigration judge, a CBP officer or ICE can say, hey, gotcha. You're an arriving alien. It's not like you live here or you've been living here. Like you're on your way in right now or you're still en route to your destination in the U.S. We got you. We're removing you. You're barred for 5 years from getting a visa, so you got a 5-year bar. Don't come back again. And if they re-enter, then it's a 10-year bar, and there's a lot of other punishments that come into place. The agency has limited the use of expedited removal to eligible aliens apprehended within 100 miles of the border. This is not a statutory requirement. It drags more people into it. I don't feel like I need to take a position on that one. Typically, I like to limit the government's authority to mess with people, but I don't know. New policies. All right, again, we should... Well, I don't want to say that. That word might get me banned here. Let's see here. Budget. Congress should mandate and fund additional bed space for alien detainees. The number of beds available on a daily basis should be up to 100,000. No, I don't like that. I don't like detaining immigrants. You might have 100,000 people coming and they need to be detained or something. They don't need to be detained. You don't have that many who need to be detained, even though you have that many that might be appearing at the border. If you're already going to be using expedited removal, do that. Or parole them in like happens now for people who are awaiting a decision on an asylum application. That's a better use of time. We don't want to incentivize filling detention centers with 100,000 people. That's a bad idea. Not only is it a bad idea, it's expensive. And it's going to add, this is going to be like a giveaway to private industries, the private prison industry as well, which it's not like they care about the quality of care. We hear a lot of stories, and these aren't, it's not just stories, it's accounts, real things happening. People dying in immigration detention the way it is now because it's terrible. They might say, hey, I'm sick. And the officer in charge says, well, forget you. Or how about we put you in a cooler instead? How do you like that? And people end up dying. Like, seriously. So to increase the capacity of the government to hold people and not treat them well is not something I would want to support. Congress should fund ICE for at least 20,000 ERO officers and 5,000 Office of the Principal Legal Advisor attorneys. So those would be immigration court attorneys, essentially. They should fund ICE for more officers and attorneys. Again, if you're going to be deporting so many people, you're going to need people to handle that. There is due process still to some degree. Oh, here's a section on USCIS reforms. And as much as I'd like to get into it, we've been doing this for about an hour now. I feel like I've shared some good information. I got to go figure out what this reacting ID is, because I don't know what the Cool Toad Vlogs is, and I don't want him to take advantage of my stream or something here. So I want to thank you for joining us today. I'm Attorney James Betzold. Again, 15 years experience in the practice of immigration here in the United States. We unite families through immigration. This is not just, this Project 2025 makes it seem like, yikes, it's going to ruin a lot of people's families. That's how I see it. Anything we can do to unite families pre-death is a good idea, right? And here what they're doing is just, instead of detailing the ways that they could fix the immigration system, they're just really taking vengeance out on people who they want to be able to deport without taking into account the fact that, hey, that law that we have that says we should deport everyone, maybe that's not the best law to begin with. What I really would have liked to see is some statutory reform proposals about actually fixing the immigration system, reorganizing it. If you're going to reorganize and mishmash all these executive agencies together, why not provide them a statutory framework to operate under, where you can build in efficiencies instead. All right, well, that's going to do it for today. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thanks, Guerrero, Addy Girly 8, Oswaldo Reyes, everybody who joined us in the live. Thanks so much for the questions, and we hope you have a great evening.